which I could never get to unlock. I'm on my Linux system. I could never figure out the secret handshake to unlock it, but the second camera, just plugged it in and it worked. So
yeah, it looks like it's working just fine.
Yeah, great. I don't want to see all the junk in the back of this room, though. That's the only thing.
We're still always surprised when we turn it on and it works the first time.
Yes, I expected to spend a couple of hours looking at all the security denials, and
Yeah.
I just plugged it in and there it was. And I was like, thank you very much.
Yep.
Well, I know Ms. Powell is having some camera issues herself, and so may not be able to get the camera working tonight, but I'm wondering if Mr. Plain will be turning his camera on.
Yeah, sorry about the no face. I had it working before. I just went out again, and I think it might be time for a new laptop, sadly. So it's been happening on Google Meet and in Zoom.
Right. Well, I think we can go ahead and get started. So good evening, everybody. Welcome to a meeting of the East Greenwich School Committee. I will invite everybody to join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you to everybody for joining us this evening. The next item on the agenda is the sealing. Oh, actually, before I begin, as I normally do, I'd just like to make sure that everybody is aware of the panelists that are with us this evening. Some folks may be dialing in from home and may not have a visual on us. So it looks like we have a full complement of school committee members. I'm Carolyn Mark, the chair of the committee. We have Ann Musella, Dr. Jean Quinn, Dr. Lori McEwen, Mr. Matt Plain, Jeff Dronzek, and Allison Powell. We also have with us our school committee clerk, Chris DeMeglio, Dr. Arnoff, our director of technology. Thank you so much for hosting us this evening. Our counselor, Matt Oliverio, and of course, Superintendent Meyer. So again, welcome to everybody to the meeting. Because we are still operating in a virtual format, we will be doing roll call votes so that it is visible to everybody how school committee members are voting. And when we, well, I'll talk about public comment when we get there. The next item on the agenda is about the sealing of executive session minutes and disclosure of votes. As there was no executive session this evening, I have nothing to report on that, which brings us to public comment. So this is the part of the agenda where any member of the public who has a comment, a question, or a concern that they would like to express for any items that are not on this evening's agenda, this is the time when you'd be welcome to do that. I do make time for public comment on agenda items if there's interest, and I would just ask any attendees to use the raise hand function when we get to the agenda item that you would like to comment on, so that I can recognize you after the full committee has had an opportunity to discuss that agenda item and fully deliberate. If there were anything that we were to be voting on this evening, I would entertain public comment before we took the vote. If you are calling in from home, you don't have access to the raise hand function, you would simply *9 to raise your hand, and then when we call on you, you would *6 to unmute yourself. So I think that's it with respect to housekeeping. And so again, this is the public comment section for anything that is not on the agenda. I am looking at our current list of attendees to see if anybody has their hands raised. And I'm not seeing any hands raised. So if there's no public comment, we will go ahead and move on to the approval of minutes. So this evening we have two sets of minutes. We have regular and executive session minutes from October 6th. I just made a note that all school committee members were present for those two meetings, just as a reminder. And so I would go ahead and entertain a motion to approve those two sets of minutes.
So moved.
So moved by Ms. Musella, seconded by Dr. Quinn. Is there any discussion? All those in favor, roll call.
Allison Powell.
Aye.
Ian Musella.
Aye.
Carolyn Moore.
Aye.
Jean Quinn.
Aye.
Jeff Dronzak. Lori McEwen. Aye. Matt Plain.
Aye.
The ayes have it. The feedback makes for a very dramatic roll call vote, but we made it through it. So thank you for that. And the ayes have it. The minutes are adopted. That brings us to our action items this evening. We have 3 homeschool requests, one for grade K, grade 1, and another for grade 2. You have the information in your packets, and the recommendation from district administration is to approve these homeschool requests. So I will entertain a motion to approve them all.
So moved.
So moved by Dr. McEwen,
Second.
seconded by Mr. Plain. Is there any discussion? All those in favor, roll call vote.
Allison Powell. Ian Musella.
Aye.
Carolyn Moore.
Aye.
Jean Quinn.
Aye.
Jeff Dronzak.
Aye.
Lori McEwen. Matt Plain. I'm going to need to switch computers. This isn't working.
All right, well, thank you. The ayes have it. Those homeschool requests are approved. And hopefully with the next roll call vote, Ms. DiMeglio will figure out the feedback problem. So thank you for that. Next on the agenda, we
Madam
have,
Chair,
yes,
I'm just, sorry, just a point of order.
yes.
Does Ms. DiMeglio have to be the one calling roll call?
I mean, it's typical as the town clerk, but not absolutely necessary. So if she's not able to fix it, we can certainly conduct the roll call vote ourselves and she can make a note of it.
Okay.
So we'll just give her one more chance to see if maybe it's fixed.
Okay. I just don't want to have her worrying about changing computers while she's trying to take minutes. So I'm happy to, have us find another way.
That would be great if you could.
All right, terrific. Well, Dr. McEwen, perhaps you can you can assist with that. All right,
Sure,
thank you.
I'll do it.
So that brings us to a resignation this evening. We have Maria Afedisian, a paraprofessional at Frenchtown. You have the letter in your packet. And so I will entertain a motion to accept that resignation.
So moved.
So moved by Ms. Musella, seconded by Dr. Quinn. Is there any discussion? I certainly want to thank Ms. Avedizian for her service to our school community, and I wish her all the best. So with that, we'll do a roll call vote.
All right. Allison Powell.
Aye.
Anne.
Aye.
Carolyn.
Aye.
Jean.
Aye.
Jeff.
Aye.
Lori votes aye. Matt.
Aye.
Thank you. Ayes have it.
The ayes have it. The resignation is accepted. And next, we have an administrative contract for Rosette Figueroa. I hope I said her name correctly. I struggle with it every time. She is moving into the position of administrative assistant to the Director of Student Services. Excited to see her embrace a new role in the district. So you have the contract before you. I will entertain a motion to approve the contract.
So moved.
So moved by Dr. McEwen,
Second.
seconded by Mr. Plain. Discussion? Ms. Musella?
Hi, thanks. And thank you for this. I emailed Matt Oliverio before this, and I think that we discussed taking out the sentence under provision 1, employment, rather the employment of the student services confidential administrative assistant shall be considered at will, et cetera. I think we talked about taking out that sentence.
That'd be consistent, yeah, even though it's a limited term, but you're right, still a term. So we should probably remove that
Thank you.
phrase to be consistent
had-
with the other administrative contracts.
Thank you. I had one other question because that last sentence of that paragraph says that it's an exempt position. I just wanted to confirm that that was true, exempt from minimum wage provisions.
Minimum, you
Is
mean
that-
over?
Is
you
that,
mean
that's what
overtime?
that means, the overtime provision?
Yeah, the overtime is what you mean. Yeah, because it's an administrative exemption under the Fair Labor Standards Act. It'd be similar to anybody who's in, a administrative support role in an office as opposed to manual labor or a CBA where you're guaranteed an hourly wage and overtime, similar to like a Krista Maglio. So I believe it's exempt. She wouldn't be entitled to overtime. The salary position, the administrative exemption provision.
wanted
There are a
to-
number of exemptions. Yeah, executive, professional, and she would fall under the administrative. That's how I
Thank you.
see it. Mhm.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thank
Mhm.
you. So that adjustment will be noted to make sure that the contract aligns with the other ones.
Sure.
We have a motion on the table. So all those in favor, roll call vote.
Allison Powell,
Aye.
Ann Musella,
Aye.
Carolyn Mark,
Aye.
Dean Quinn,
Aye.
Jeff Dronzak.
Aye.
Lori McEwen votes aye. Matt Plain.
Aye.
The ayes have it. Great, and it looks like Ms. DeMeglio is back, and we'll give her a try again for our next vote. So that brings us to a number of policies that are before us this evening for action. So I'm just going to turn it back over to Ms. Musella to walk us through what we're looking at tonight, to let us know if there are any changes since the last time, so that we can take these either collectively or separately, depending on the will of the group.
Sure. I think the first three on the agenda that are up for repeal, we could take those together. There are no changes. Nothing's happened since the first read to change our recommendation. So I would move that this body repeals 7110, 7220, and 7235.
Second.
Second by Dr. McEwen. Is there any discussion? All those in favor, roll call vote.
Allison Powell,
Aye.
Ann Musella,
Aye.
Carolyn Mark,
Aye.
Jean Quinn,
Aye.
Jeff Dronzak,
Aye.
Lori McEwen,
Aye.
Matt Plain.
Aye.
The ayes have it. Those three policies are repealed.
Thank you. I'd like to take the next two, 41 and 21, 4121 and 4145. There are no changes since the first read. The naloxone policy is a new one, but it had been drafted some time ago. Medication policy was an undated policy, and there was one sort of minor change at the first read, no new changes. So I move that we approve 4121 and 4145.
Thank you for that. Is there a second? Seconded by Dr. Quinn. Any discussion? I just want to thank you again for your work on these policies.
Thanks to the student nurses on these in particular. I
Absolutely.
mean, the school nurses, sorry.
Absolutely. Thank you. Roll call vote.
Allison Powell,
Aye.
Ann Musella,
Aye.
Carolyn Mark,
Aye.
Jean Quinn,
Aye.
Jeff Dronzak,
Aye.
Lori McEwen,
Aye.
Matt Plain.
Aye.
The ayes have it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And then on 5310, there are no changes since the first read, which was an undated contract. You recall we sort of updated just to conform with site-based management and a couple of other things. I actually want to run by Matt Oliverio. I have just a couple of quick additions to propose. So if we look at that policy quickly,
Yep.
you see the first kind of paragraph sets forth the basic terms the basic provisions that should be included in the contract. I'd like to include a new number 3 and maybe number 4. I'm wondering if we should also include whether the position is exempt from the provisions of Rhode Island General Laws 16-12.1, school administrators' rights, and whether it's exempt, the position is exempt from overtime provisions of state and federal law. So I would propose adding a 3 and a 4 and have procedures be a new 5. What do you think about that?
No, I don't have any objection to that. I think those are all components that we should reference in the contracts.
And I think we typically do. And it just
Yep.
occurred to me just in reviewing the latest one.
Yep.
So with
think-
those changes, I would move that this body approve whatever number that is, policy 5310.
Great, thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Dr. McEwen. Any discussion? All those in favor, roll call vote.
Allison Powell,
Aye.
Ann Musella,
Aye.
Carolyn Mark,
Aye. Ms. Demeglia, we lost you.
Jeff Tronczek, Lori Mc, I keep
think we
losing
skipped
the
Jean.
sound, I'm sorry. Jeff Tronczek,
Aye.
Lori McEwen,
Aye.
Matt Plain,
We get Jean.
Yeah, we
Uh,
skipped Jean.
Jean Quinn.
Aye. Aye.
Thank you.
Great, thank you all. The ayes have it. Which brings us to the last policy up for consideration this evening. This is a third read and possible adoption of 3210, purchasing and bidding.
Thank you again. Now, when we, at our second read, I think Mr. Plain had some comments and concerns about section number 4, Roman numeral 3, section 4. I don't know what those are specifically. So I think that we might consider tabling this so that we can sort of hash it out. We ran this policy again by Matt Oliverio. The policy is intended to sort of be a streamlined version, is not intended to mirror any statutory provisions per se, but if there's something that somehow the meaning was distorted somehow, we can talk about it. But I think that if it's simple, we can go ahead and deal with it. But if it requires some discussion, then we might as well table it and just deal with it next time.
I didn't, and I think because I missed the last meeting during regular session, I didn't get Matt Plain's comments. So Matt, do you remember what your comments were?
Yeah, and I apologize. I had intended to provide you with some track changes, and I just I sent in an email at 4:28 and then walked out the door for Little League. So,
but the changes weren't there, so I just moved to table this policy.
Okay.
yeah. So, but just real quick, the I get the intent to streamline it, but I think that changed some of the statutory obligations. Like, for instance, 4A says competitive bids shall be sought either by direct solicitation, advertising, or both by the superintendent or his or her designee in his or her discretion. That's not how it works. 4555 have a particular procedure that you have to follow when it's competitive bidding. There's no options. You just do it a particular way. And then, it's not called advertising. It has there's particular terms of art that are used in that. And it may seem nitpicky, but you know this, Matt, because you've been through it. When these things get challenged and folks didn't get the bid and they look back at policy and policy doesn't mirror the law, then that's going to be an issue for us. I'm happy
to move to table it. I mean, we had a first read back in August. I don't think we need to belabor this. I think that if you have some specific comments, we'll be happy to just take a look and then we can clean it up.
Yeah, and I understand.
Time.
I brought up since August that it didn't align with the statute and we get the same version. So I'll do it, but
I apologize. I don't recall that comment from August.
If you're going to mirror
Matt,
the law,
Mr. Plain, your sound quality is not. Let's try again. So we do have a motion on the table to table this policy for now. Is there a second? Seconded by Dr. Quinn. Is there further discussion? And Mr. Plain, you were going in and out, so if
Oh, I'm sorry. I just said, I've noted for months now that the policy doesn't comply with the law. That's all.
Okay. All
And so
right.
I get the reason, I get wanting to push it along the table, but Matt didn't get to hear my comments last time.
Right.
So I just wanted to.
So
highlight.
it's,
I think that once you send us your comments, I think that we can move it along. I think that would be helpful.
All right, great.
Yeah,
Well, we
I
have
mean,
a
you can
motion on
just
the-
look at the statute and see too.
Okay.
so it's the
So we have a
competitive
motion on the
bidding.
table and it's been seconded. All those in favor of tabling this policy until next time signify by saying aye. Or I'm sorry, roll call vote.
Allison Powell,
Aye.
Ann Musella,
Aye.
Carolyn Mark,
Aye.
Jean Quinn,
Aye.
Jeff Tronzek,
Aye.
Lori McEwen,
Aye.
Matt Plain.
Aye.
The ayes have it. The policy is tabled until our next opportunity to.
Madam Chair, I want to raise
Yes.
a point of order. I hope that we don't have to resort to bickering. I think it's unproductive. And I would like, Madam Chair, you to direct this body to not bicker, please.
I'll take that under advisement, Ms. Usella. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I just don't appreciate getting cut off when I'm making a point. We all hear Ann when she has a point to make. I was making a point at the request of our council, and I was talking to our council.
Absolutely, Mr. Plain. And that's why I went back to you for discussion, because I knew that we were having some sound issues with you. You were freezing and I couldn't hear you very clearly. So I wanted to give you another opportunity to say what you had to say.
You did, and I appreciate it.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Okay, great. So thank you very much. So that brings us to reports of superintendent and staff. And so for this, I will turn it over to Superintendent Meyer.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good evening, members of the school committee and all the participants that are joining us this evening. Dr. Arnoff has a presentation to share. However, before I start, I would just ask you to indulge me for a moment so that we can recognize our principals. October is National Principals Month, and I just wanted to express my sincere gratitude for the amazing work they have been doing, certainly since we started this adventure, and continue to serve and lead our schools. The data is very clear in terms of student progress and learning, that the principal is second only to a classroom teacher in influencing teaching and learning and the progress of our students. So to them, I wish them a very happy National Principals Month and thank them for their service to our district. Okay, my report this evening has 3 aspects to it: health and safety, some technology information, and our supplemental costs through supplemental aid. I put this picture because I took it this week of one of our bus drivers who's sitting in that bus with his mask on, and I appreciate that. And I thought it was a great first slide as we go into health and safety updates. So the next slide, Dr. Arnoff. I framed my remarks this evening around what seems to be most prominent in folks' mind in terms of, what's happening with respect to COVID and positive cases and how are we responding. So I bring everybody's attention to this Back to School Rhode Island website, and I particularly took a screenshot of the screen that talks about what you need to know. It has 3 different sections to it, but this has most information that would be most important to families. The link is live there. But you can get the outbreak response protocol and testing information here. And even I find it very interesting to look at the public health data just because it's reported and kept up to date there. And Dr. Arnoff, would you just click the Back to School Rhode Island link, because I want folks to be able to see, and click the outbreak response protocol, the top box, 3rd box there. This is a really good document to refer to, and we certainly have it as our primary document in the district when we are facing a positive case or having to respond to one. But this gives really great detailed information for families if they're unsure or how all of the system works. And we can go back to that slide, Dr. Arnoff. Thank you so much. I just wanted to make sure folks knew that that link was live and where they could get some information. So the next, slide number 3 talks about what happens and how does this all work. So I put my reminder on top there where it says daily attestation in Aspen, and that is something that's expected of all families. And it is part of the process of getting into a routine and thinking about, oh my goodness, whether it's a staff member or a child, I woke up and I have this symptom or these symptoms. What do I do? And so it designates between who needs a test, if you have any one of the top symptoms that's sort of in that light green color, or 2 of the other symptoms in the yellow section of this. And then it talks about to call your healthcare provider or call that number to schedule a test. And I'll give you some more information about that. But this document is available to all families. We have it. I put it in the field memo, but it's a good reminder. Okay, what do we do when we wake up and we have some symptoms? Okay, next screen, Dr. Arnoff. This is the information about the Department of Health K-12 testing schedule. And if your child or staff member wakes up with or has those symptoms in the middle of the day, wherever it may be, whether it's the top box with the 1 or the bottom box with the 2, the instructions are to call that number, the 844-857-1814 number, to schedule a test. The benefit of using this testing protocol that's set up by the state is that it immediately puts the K-12 process in place and allows for documentation and communication to be made to the schools. Also, it gives you access to the rapid test and the PCR test. The closest location to us is the Wickford train station. And you do have to call, you do have to schedule, and the way you receive results are through an email in the evening for the rapid test if you had it earlier in the day. And then you must log on to the Dominion Diagnostic site to get results from the PCR test. A lot of people are confused with regard to the fact that they wait for that second report for the PCR test, and you don't necessarily get it. You have to go on and look to see what was your test result. But again, this is the Rhode Island Department of Health. That link is also live, and it gives you access to all of the sites that are available for K-12 testing. The whole theory behind this is, again, you'd have the rapid test in the first 24 hours, but you still must stay home until you get the PCR results. And RIDO is hoping that happens within a 48-hour window. Next slide, please. So what happens when the district has notification? So we've had to respond, and we've had 3 different situations that we have had to respond to in 3 different schools. We've either been contacted directly from RIDO, or the family has contacted us and we in turn contacted RIDO. But what is the process? They direct all of our response. They are the experts in this, so we take their direction from them. We take responsibility for providing the necessary documentation, and we were able and ready and prepared to provide that documentation where it was needed. Once RIDO receives that documentation, that is when they begin to conduct their contact tracing, and they directly notify families and individuals, whether it's a student or a staff member that is positive, and anybody that was in contact with them. And then, we'll send a letter home to any student or staff member that has been in the same, that RIDO says there is possibility that these folks are in close contact and you should make them aware of that. If they were close contacts that needed testing or intervention by the Rhode Island Department of Health, they would have had that contact with them directly. That does not come from us, but we would do an informative letter. And then, in some cases, which has been more common, we've sent out a letter to the entire school district that said, we've received notification of a positive case, but in certain situations, there is no contact tracing needed because of the point of infection or whatever RIDO determined. There wasn't a need for that. Again, we take our direction from them. They have been very responsive. In fact, the most recent situation, they were calling me at 9 o'clock at night on a Sunday night, which, becomes something that requires me and our district to make a determination at night with their help. But that's the kind of communication that would come from the district. Next slide, please, Dr. Arnoff. So when can your child go back to school? That link is live too, the after illness return attestation form. Certainly the medical professionals will tell you, the child's pediatrician, the Rhode Island Department of Health will give you direct instruction as to when you can return. So if you had a test, it was negative, and the child has no symptoms, then they can return back to school. But you need to fill out this after illness return attestation form. The family fills that out. It doesn't need to be completed by a medical professional. And then if your child did not have a COVID test or wasn't needed to have one, typically if your child is better, he or she does not have a fever and they are beginning to feel better. Next slide, please, Dr. Arnoff. And then this is, more detailed information about what happens if your child did test positive or a staff member did test positive, and how long you need to stay at home, and when the child can return back to school again. And you will have, certainly guidance as a parent and staff member as well from RIDO with regard to when you can return to work and what kind of care you need for your child and your family, and who needs to quarantine should that be the case. And next slide. So I put this reminder here about masking because it is really incumbent upon us as a community to make sure that we abide by all of the safety protocols, whether in the school setting or in the community, because that allows us to stay open as a school. It sort of is a everybody in it effort. So I do this reminder to everybody that masks work and they help keep us well. If you have any questions or any concerns, you can contact your school principal or school nurse teacher with questions and assistance. They have been remarkable, our school nurse teachers, to Ms. Musella's point earlier with their help with the policies. They have taken the lead on all of this, and I rely heavily on their work. They are engaged daily in all of this and maintaining proper spaces in our school settings, and with where students have to be isolated and making the proper phone calls. So I am grateful to their efforts too. And then next slide. And before I go into the HVAC systems, I do need to remark on the cooperation from our students. Masking seems to be just, part of their daily routine now. It doesn't seem like something out of the ordinary for them. They are very compliant with it, and all of us adults that are wearing them as well are remarking how we wondered how we would get used to it, but we certainly have been able to do that. I wanted to mention about the HVAC systems and the air exchanges because things are changing. Weather is changing. It's going to be getting colder. How much can we keep our windows open? How are we going to respond to that? Mr. Wilmarth has been working with the state level folks because this is an issue across the state with regard to, when it's time to close the windows and, we can't have outside air, 10-degree outside air coming in. It will freeze our pipes and we won't have appropriate heating systems. So we are in the process as a district using guidance from Mr. Wilmarth and his colleagues across the state about doing some calculations in our classrooms with the amount of air exchange and a CO2 meter. We did place an order that we're not obligated to, but we wanted to make sure with the EDOC, the Education Operations Center, for portable helper filter air purifiers for every classroom. We anticipate funding for this. I heard 2 opportunities for funding today. I think it's going to be asked of the governor to fund this for every school. We'll see how that goes, but we do at least have them on order, and that will help us mitigate the lesser air exchange in our classrooms. And the EDOC is really taking the lead on this effort at the state level, especially trying to get the air filters because they're not readily available. Next slide. With a technology update with regard to our Chromebooks. So if you recall, we talked about an ACER order we placed in July, and our representative from CDW cannot give us a firm date of delivery. However, he contacted Dr. Arnoff and myself about access to Dell Chromebooks. So we adjusted the ACER order to order the 200 Dell Chromebooks so that we can at least meet the urgent need. We expect delivery at the end of this month or at the beginning of November at the latest. That's something that's very exciting, and I think take some stress off of the teachers and the students trying to make a hybrid model work. So I look forward to having those Dell Chromebooks and being able to distribute those accordingly. And then the next update for you is, okay, Supplemental Impact Aid. So you may recall we've talked about 2 buckets, if you will, of money with regard to aid. One was the ESSER fund that was part of the CARES Act, and the other one was a Supplemental Impact Aid. We did receive $83,732 of that money. That submission was sent to RIDE. We have had final approval, and we are actually receiving the funding. Ms. Baker is working on putting in the request for the funds, but this is how the money was spent. We used $60,873 to buy PPE that was mainly masking. All of the petitions and dividers that you have seen or maybe would see in schools if you were able to come visit. You know, the plexiglass, there's dividers, some of the dividers that were placed in the observation rooms and things that the nurses used, and then the original storage containers was part of that budget. And then an additional $22,500 for property and equipment, and those were for the live cams that Dr. Arnold purchased to run the classroom with a live stream. So that's all set, RIDE final approval, and we expect that those funds in the district quite soon. And then the next slide is the ESSER funding, and that is the Elementary and Secondary School Relief Fund, and the purpose of that is for emergency relief. Now this, much like funding we receive for our other title grants, we're required to have an appropriation to local private schools. Mr. Pedraza had worked with OLM and Sweet Peas as part of because they participate in our other plans. So from our end, we use, but you know, based on the requirements of the grant and this ESSER fund, we oversee that as a district. Our responsibility is to oversee the expenditures for the private schools and support them in their work. So from the district, we have expenses of $64,155, and that included Seesaw, which is a platform like Google Classroom, but mostly for our younger learners, a K2 platform, which is much more developmentally appropriate for those folks. We purchased a subscription to Panorama, so we have the ability to administer our own surveys and have more robust data. The Edgenuity curriculum platform was purchased for use at the middle and the high school, and then some tech supplies that Dr. Arnoff had with speakers were added to that grant. And then, you know, the private schools had $5,687 that they use for property and equipment. that, so the total was 69,858. That has RIDE program officer approved status, and the only thing we're waiting for is the financial approval status on that one. So we are in good shape with both of those funding sources, and grateful to have anything we can get. And that is my update this evening, and I am happy to answer any questions you may have. Dr.
Thank you so much for all of that, Superintendent Meyer. That was great and important information. We really appreciate it. I will open it up for discussion. If any members of the committee have any questions or comments, Dr. McEwen?
I think she froze.
Oh, I think she froze too. I'll open it up to other members of the committee until we can get Dr. McEwen back. Does anybody else have any other comments or questions? Dr. Quinn.
Hi, I just wanted to thank the superintendent for this very thorough and very well thought out approach that we've had. I continue to be impressed with the depth of the expertise that's been brought to bear on this, both in from educators to public health officials to medical professionals. I think we're all trying to do the best we can on this, and we're giving it the serious consideration that it really deserves. I also wanted to kind of give a shout out to two of the medical professionals who have been collaborating with the school department, which was Dr. Rani and Dr. Goldberg, I believe, who've developed this amazing app called My COVID Risk. And you can, if you're not sure whether, how risky something that you're thinking of participating in is, you can download this. And I used it over the weekend to respond to a concern that a resident had about an athletic practice, and it was great. It was very easy to use, and it I certainly have no expertise to make that judgment, but with this app I was able to confidently respond that that they didn't really need to be concerned. So anyway, I wanted to express our gratitude for development of that app.
Thank you, Dr. Quinn. And so I'll go back to Dr. McEwen now. Welcome back.
Thank you. Sorry, I was like, oh, they're all frozen. And then I realized it must have been me. Thanks so much. And I'm sorry I missed the beginning of Dr. Quinn's comments. But thank you so much, Mrs. Meyer, for all of this, for all of your work, and obviously for thanking the principals at the start of it. I appreciate all of you and all of this work. I have a couple of questions on the presentation. The first is, you mentioned the HEPA filters and that the intent and hope is that the governor will pay for them. Do you have a line item cost for how much that will be in total, regardless of who pays for it?
I do, Dr. McEwen. It's quite pricey. It's $100,000. That's what Mr. Wilmarth estimates. So that's why we are hanging our hat on funding from the state.
Thank you. Thank you. My next question is about, I think it's related to the Supplemental Impact Aid, but I'm not sure if it fell under this. This was aid coming from from RIDE, I believe, for substitute teachers. And I'm wondering, and you may not have the data at your fingertips, what our daily substitute line has looked like. And I don't even necessarily mean budget, but our need for substitutes, if we're fielding substitutes, and if you've got any more information on whether or not we in East Greenwich would be eligible for any of that funding.
I'm happy to answer that question. We submitted a grant for the funding. We received notification that our grant was received. Ms. Emilio and Ms. Baker are the ones that are working on that. We're hopeful because the notification that we received that they had were in receipt of our application, while they received applications for far more money than they have, there wasn't not everybody applied for the funding. So we're a little bit hopeful we'll get some money from that. substitutes are, you know, we are, it's not an easy endeavor by any means. Ms. Emilio is working incredibly hard to try to make this work. We did in fact lose some this week to another district that's paying more money, and that was somewhat disappointing. Yet today she was able to onboard 5 new substitutes. So we were celebrating that today. So, you know, we're making, you know, maybe we make, you know, 5 steps forward and then a step back, but today we celebrated what we were able to do.
And just one final question. Thank you for all of that. There's nothing that you've seen thus far that would grant us any additional funds for personnel outside of the daily substitutes. So we haven't heard about anything for long-term substitutes, or even should there be a need for additional staff based on spacing and those kinds of things?
I have not, Dr.
Okay.
McKeown.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you for all that, Dr. McEwen. Are there any other comments or questions for the superintendent? Okay. Thank you so much, Superintendent Meyer. So I believe we're going to turn to Assistant Superintendent, Mr. Pedraza, for our teaching and learning topic this evening. And this is slated to be an update on professional development and curriculum. So Mr. Pedraza, welcome back. Just need to unmute.
Oh, thought I was going to get in there before Zoom bingo came in. Sorry, we have a little joke. There are some things, you know, you're muted. So thought I was going to get to that unmute button, but thank you everyone. Good evening, everyone. Tonight I'm going to present a teaching and learning update, so central to professional development and curriculum. However, we'll talk about some total ongoing things that are going on in regards to teaching and learning throughout the course of the district. If you would go back a few slides for me, please, Dr. Aronoff. Oh, I'm sorry, just one more. I started off with this quote because ultimately the professional development that has been scheduled most recently has been set up because of the response by both teachers and paraprofessionals. And what they are asking for is they are asking for time. They're asking for time because of just what we are asking them to do and what they are doing, and doing a fantastic job, and what they are looking to sustain, as well as what we've presented to them that's new. Whether that be curriculum, whether that be curriculum tools, whether that be technology tools, and they want time with one another to collaborate with one another. And so my thanks to the Professional Development Subcommittee who helped to frame the professional development and all of our endeavors that we have moving forward to make sure that time is of the essence. Next slide, please. So as much as everybody wants time, we still have lots and lots of stuff to do. And our principals need to make sure that they have time, and grade levels and departments still have time, and every grade level or teacher has individual needs. So we actually did break up yesterday's professional development into three blocks of time, and I'd like to go through, and each one got a third of the time. And next slide, please. So at the secondary level, each building did something different because each building's need is different, and grade level. At the secondary level, at the high school, Principal Hopkins ran basically a teacher show and tell to get the teachers together to talk to one another across departments. What's working with the hybrid, what's working with our distance learners, and not only just tell you what's working. Let me show you how I'm doing it. And then in the second part of his time, Mr. Hopkins took the faculty and staff there through best practice research in regards to expanding inclusion, and did a few article studies that was very impressive. At Cole, they continue to work on the social emotional curriculum and working with the Social Institute. Principal Tober tells me that they had Zoom meetings with the Social Institute and took teachers through the data regarding social media's influence on social emotional health of secondary and young and mid-adolescents. And their next step is to share that information with students and parents, and then in the next step, integrate that into the classroom. Next slide, please. At the upper elementary level, they are in year 1 of EL curriculum, as well as social emotional curriculum of second step, and in our math curriculum in Visions 2020. So most of their building time and their grade level time really focused in on those curricular aspects and becoming familiar and making sure that everything was lined up. Next slide, please. In the lower elementary, because they're in the second year of EL, while they did work in those same 3 arenas, they also continued to work on those dual mode teaching strategies and sharing with one another. Next slide, please. In terms of I wanted to show a little bit of what's on people's plate, or all of the opportunities that even when all of the school-based time and the department time is done, some of the individual things that our teachers are taking on and learning and experiencing and growing with. So at the elementary level, we've got the new EL curriculum, both the physical curriculum in terms of the books and in terms of the platform, as well as the flex curriculum, which is online and made for distance learning. We do have our math curriculum in Visions 2020, second step, which I referred to. Earlier on tonight, Superintendent Myers referred to Seesaw, which is actually a platform that was given pre-K through 2, in terms of giving a more of an LMS platform and a more age-appropriate and developmental appropriate computer platform. So rolling that out to not only students, but also parents as well. We continue to work and offer Bridge RI courses, and we will be ramping those up in future months. And then we have the New England Base Camp playlist, which ranges everything from differentiated instruction to trauma-informed schools, as well as then continuing to refine our Google as our base tech platform. Next slide, please. At the secondary level, we have started to roll out on some of those asynchronous days, the formal training regarding Edgenuity as a supplemental platform for our faculty and staff, especially with those asynchronous days, and planning for if there were a distance learning aspect that needs to occur on a more regular basis. Again, Cole is working with the Social Institute. We started to roll out Bridge RI and their course offerings to our secondary level, New England Base Camp, as well. And then the next part that we were able to offer to secondary is the G Suite Enterprise for Education. So for folks in education or who are using Google Meet rather than Zoom, there have been all of these refinements that have been promised by Google and promised. Well, of course, they roll them out. Things such as break rooms, controlling the chat, allowing people to some security upgrades. Well, they roll them out, but then all of a sudden they say, well, that was free for a little bit of time, but now it's not free. Well, those things are essential. And so through collaboration with Dr. Aronoff, we have been able to secure G Suite Enterprise for Education licenses for East Greenwich Public Schools. And so we made sure to give teachers time and make them aware that we have this and that it's not going away. And so to really make sure that they have access to the resources and how to use some of those new developments. On a curriculum level, it is also beginning yesterday. It is actually Digital Citizenship Week. And so we rolled out a little bit of Common Sense Media, some of their plans that teachers could integrate. Because we're doing so much online, we don't want to forget that citizenship piece. And then, as always, again, referring back to the Google Teacher Center. Next slide. So all of those were things that teachers in their individual time, if they had time for, or in terms of getting ready or planning, or if they didn't want to continue to work with teams, were things, that's just a few of the things on their plate. That's not even talking about assessment results or the students in front of them, or parent phone calls, or getting their grade books or grading, and all of those things getting taken care of. But what they asked for was time, and that's what they got. And based on the feedback, which is the same questions that were asked on the last one, I think you'll see that they were very happy and that we met their needs. So we gave them the autonomy, overwhelmingly 88% so far of 127 responses. Next slide, please. We explained why it was being offered. Next slide, please. Clearly, there were plenty of opportunities to collaborate. Again, that one piece, time and time with my colleagues. And again, overwhelming majority of, at this point, over 85%. Next slide, please. And resources. Next slide. And the time that was given. So again, love seeing that skewed to the right-hand side, or to the 4 and 5. In terms of the feedback that we're receiving so far from the 126 responses. That was, again, when I created this slideshow and wrapped up this afternoon. And so I do expect more responses to come in. Next slide, please. Now tying into other things that are going on. So people want time, and based on all the things that I've gone through, hopefully you can see why they need that, but we keep on going. School improvement teams, we focused in today at Admin Council with our principals in terms of not only the future formations and complying with Rhode Island general laws and the Educational Accountability Act, but taking inventory of where people are right now, as well as some of the things that people are going to be asked to do, both because of policy, local policy, and the Rhode Island general laws. We just heard back from RIDE. RIDE just published their evaluation guidance. So we need to reconvene the district evaluation committee. That will be done within the next 2 weeks. The PD subcommittee will continue or will reconvene to get the feedback. We've also expanded the membership, or are looking to expand the membership and add a member from each school. And we have 2 professional development days to take care of in November, both the state on the 16th and the local PD on the 25th, which will serve at the elementary level, will continue to serve as parent-teacher conferences, but professional development at the secondary level. But it's amazing that we are more than half the way through October, and we've got mid-quarter 1 already, but we also have all of those assurances that in our reopening plans, that seems, boy, like a lifetime ago. We still have to make, we're still working on making sure that what we said we were going to do, that we are going to do, and hopefully you saw some of those metrics and some of those promises being made good on in our earlier parts of this presentation. Next slide, please. Paraprofessionals and teachers, thanks to Dr. Hughes and Ms. Janest, we continue to expand upon and recertify in terms of safety care and de-escalation training. We are getting ramped up with STAR and interim assessments. There is some RIDE news on this, but we're waiting until that is confirmed, but we're working on that. Also, because we don't have enough to do, it is my somewhat pleasure to announce that, or to make public that Cole Middle School has been selected to engage in NAEP testing this year. And so we will be working on that later on with a bigger window with the U.S. Department of Education coming on in. We do have a district team. I know Superintendent Myers reported on this in her last meeting, where we are working with the Annenberg Institute out of Brown University and the Rhode Island Department of Education, and we are sending a district team to work on best practices and research in terms of best practices with reopening and closing the achievement gaps. As previously discussed earlier today, Title I, Title II, the CRF and ESSA grants continue to roll in. Once those get those final approval, that will hopefully give us the, guarantee the financial wherewithal and flexibility that we need to make sure that all of this is able to be accomplished and people are able to be compensated and we're able to compensate our vendors. And then last, but certainly not least, even though it's last, it is still first, we continue to work on the vision of the graduate in terms of templates, whether it be for courses. I'm currently working on templates for courses, departments, grade level, scope and sequence, as well as a crosswalk of existing metrics and opportunities that exist throughout the district. Next slide, please. So with that, I'm happy to take any questions that people may have, but hopefully you see that there's robust teaching and learning and professional development that is going on, and that I would be more than happy to discuss further with anyone or answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you so much for that, Mr. Pedraza. It's always so helpful to get a window into how our administrators, teachers, and staff are spending their professional development days. So I really appreciate you going into that level of detail. I see Dr. McEwen's hand is raised.
And I promised the rest of the committee, even though I was taking a whole bunch of notes, some of these things are probably things I'll go back and just ask Mr. Pedraza about, not necessarily public forum stuff, but just maybe even some stuff I can share, especially around Portrait of a Graduate. My question is really about the survey data. So thank you so much for collecting that survey data. Like you, I love seeing that skew over there to the strongly agree with so much of it. We saw time was a little bit lower because there's never enough, but still really strong feedback from teachers. So my question is, I know that 127 is not doesn't represent everyone, but like you said, we're still getting some feedback back. I do wonder if that encompasses paraprofessionals or if that was survey data from teachers only.
If we are currently at 140, as of right now, I'm looking at it, we currently have 141 responses, and of those 141, 16.3% are paraprofessionals, as they were included in that data as well. 72% identify as teachers, and we then can keep on breaking it down in terms of specialists, secretaries. Some even put department chair and kept on narrowing down. So I did send out the second round, and so again, having just gone out yesterday at 2:30 at the conclusion, I expect those numbers to continue to rise.
And so that, my question is also, as you started to talk about disaggregating the data, my wondering is about any differences between any of those subgroups, in particular, any divide with elementary and secondary. So I think we heard when we were talking about going back to the full 5 days, we heard some teachers, and I've heard from some offline, I'm sure you all have heard, that not having that asynchronous Monday, which feels like losing something because we had it for some time, but in fact we gained it for some period of time. That felt like perhaps a burden on elementary teachers. So I would be interested in knowing their feedback, if it is still largely positive about the amount of time. That would be really useful. If you don't have it now, that's fine, but that would be of interest to me. And the other thing would be about, this is a negotiation thing, so it's really not even something we can do anything about right here. It's something that I believe that the teachers agree to. But parent-teacher conferences are just not professional development. And so, I wonder about how we support elementary teachers. And just, again, I'm just curious about their feedback, and just, that's more of a comment for this board. as we're moving forward the next round of negotiations, considering things like that. That isn't, everybody calls it professional development, uses that time. That's not what it is. I'll make one more comment before, and then I promise I will stop. And the other is simply that, again, this is a comment for our committee, perhaps, is that as we're thinking about our vision of a graduate, moving into strategic plan, keeping that front of mind and making sure that we also include at some point vision of leader, vision of educator, and vision of our school district and community. So I appreciate all the work. I can't believe how much there is and how much you're getting done. And to see those positive responses certainly feels that's something really great. And if there's any anecdotal feedback that you get, you know, fill in the blank, that's trending towards something, we'd be interested in that, I'm sure, as well. Thank you so much for the presentation. And your PowerPoints are always on such really cool backgrounds. It makes it fun to watch as well.
Thank you for that, Dr. McHugh.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions from members of the committee before I turn to the public? Ms. Musella?
Thank you. I also thank you for all the work. Question, you know, because I raised the issue some time ago about the Mondays moving to synchronous days for elementary students. I think my question is also geared toward elementary teachers and paraprofessionals. With the work that was done this past Monday, I think I'm curious, how will that translate to elementary students and parents?
So I think what we need to see, and actually although we have still elementary and secondary with hybrid students, we do have more dedicated full DL classrooms in the elementary, which I think, you know, again, it's very difficult because any teacher at any time, regardless of whether they have no distance learning students or they have some, it's a potential matter of time until they might be asked to do that. So, you know, so while the impetus in terms of at the secondary level where you're guaranteed, even if you have 100% in students, those students are still accessing the guaranteed and viable curriculum through digital means, and to plan asynchronous activities so that you can give synchronous time and in-person time to folks. So that's a constant reality at the secondary level because of Superintendent Myers and all of the principals' work to try and shift to create distance learning positions at the elementary. Again, anything I say is not going to do the Herculean effort and work that's happening at the distance learning or throughout the course of this year, but there, in terms of the, for lack of a better term, demographic breakdown of distance learning that is in secondary versus elementary is a little bit less. Because we have the 100% dedicated classrooms as well as then those cohorts sticking together. So in terms of making sure that your daily planning includes 3 different cohorts, that doesn't happen as much at the elementary level as it's ubiquitous at the secondary level. And so while I'm sympathetic in that I like the asynchronous Mondays for lots of different reasons, whether it be, you know, habits of mind or time planning or working independently, or just how it makes us reimagine what it means to learn independently or with scaffolded supports. It is something that, again, in terms of a heavy push or an endorsement moving forward, I don't believe we have a recommendation at this time to change. But I would defer to Superintendent Myers.
I'm sorry, I don't, I might have gotten lost. I just don't understand. I think just my question was for elementary students and parents, how does what happened this past Monday, how does that translate to them, elementary students? It's just I'm not sure.
So,
There's a disconnect. Sorry.
I'm sorry. So in terms of how students at the elementary level
What type of professional development did elementary teachers participate in on Monday? That is something that would translate to us as elementary parents or students who are in this COVID environment.
Okay, so in whether it be through the entire elementary, it would be working with the curriculum and the curriculum tools in terms of Envisions 2020, whether it be the EL Flex curriculum and becoming involved in that, as well as planning to make sure that there's alignment across grade levels. And then if you were to shift down to the lower elementary, there would be time for the creation of lessons, as well as then the parent and the student implementation of the distance learning platform of Seesaw.
Was there anything that was devoted to how to organize and communicate workflow to parents and students, given the sort of the hybrid nature of the COVID environment?
At the secondary level, or excuse me, at the upper elementary, it mainly focused in on, again, new curriculum, whereas at the lower elementary level, those dual mode teaching strategies and sharing out those hybrid practices and distance learning practices, those were brought up not only at the school level but at the grade team level. But in terms of communication strategies specifically, no.
Thank you.
So, so again, I just want to remind folks that Ms. Powell's having difficulty with her camera, but she did notify me in the chat that she has a question. So, Ms. Powell, if you want to go ahead and unmute, you're welcome to ask your question out loud.
All right, thank you. And I did put it to all the panelists so that everyone would have a chance to see it, just in case. But I know that I've been hearing and I've read in a lot of districts, in a lot of states, in a lot of places locally all over the country, that having asynchronous days for common planning, for professional development, that teachers are finding this like invaluable in the COVID environment. And I know we have the state PD days, there are several of them on the calendar, but for elementary, the Monday asynchronous days are phasing out starting next week. And I just didn't know if we'd had any feedback from teachers on that, whether they're finding that valuable, whether they're concerned about losing that day. So yeah.
Do you want me to answer that question, Mr. Pedraza? we can tag team.
Tag team this one, yes.
Yeah, Ms. Powell, we have had feedback, certainly anytime that teachers have an opportunity to meet and collaborate is always important time. So, I've certainly had specific contact from teachers that, advocate for that asynchronous Monday, especially from teachers that don't become distance learners in their classroom or hybrid learners, as we're, looking towards how can is there a way to envision, creating just dedicated distance learning classrooms. But the majority, so we have a few left, but again, the person, it's very clear that high performing countries have give teachers more time to meet and collaborate than typically American schools do. But yes, there are people that have interested in the asynchronous Mondays. Becomes a balance, of having kids in school.
No, and I understand, and it was also going to, I think, some of what Ms. Nisela said and Mr. Pedraza, just that at any time, any teacher could have to do distance learning. And so in this sort of, I don't want to say precarious, but it could change, day to day, even though we have been able to do these dedicated distance classes, because teachers still have to plan and be prepared to do distance learning at a moment's notice, and we don't have, administrative support to help upload all of that into Google Classroom, make sure all of those lessons are done. Teachers are still having to do this sort of side-by-side planning so that they're ready to put something up any day on distance learning. So I was just, I was curious about that. So whether or not, I know how much of a push there has been. I'm not trying to suggest one way or the other. It just seems to me that there might be value in this environment to more of those. Wasn't sure. So thank you.
Thank you for that, Ms. Powell. Mr. Pedraza, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, just in terms of, there's been those conversations about it, fortunately or unfortunately. November, we've got is a choppy month, actually, in terms the ability for us to offer an asynchronous as well as then maintain in-person learning and keep the momentum that we have. Just the way the calendar breaks down in terms of election day, in terms of a state day, in terms of Thanksgiving recess, it really is a choppy calendar, as well as to get in to not have a full week yet of elementary all in. We'll see, and it's definitely something that we continue to have conversations about. But that'll definitely, we'll continue to revisit and discuss with the EGEA, as well as just how our teachers are doing through December and January moving forward, as well as see where our state numbers are taking us. I mean, going back to our reopening plan and some of the words that Dr. Rainey has, and seeing some of our data statewide, that might be a determining factor of or an influencing factor moving forward. But I think in terms of whether it be the power of our synchronous activities, and especially in our youngest learners, that in person, to leverage that while we can is very important.
Thank you for that. I saw that Dr. Quinn had his hand up, and then I'll go to Dr. McEwen.
Yes, just a brief comment. I think it's remarkable that you're getting the favorable ratings, as favorable as you're getting on the PD activities. Honestly, and when I've talked to very experienced educators over the years, it's not something that they felt was done particularly well or was a good use of their time in many cases, and to have a pretty good agreement that this was worthwhile, I think is commendable. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. McEwen?
I wanted to just raise a point that I'm hoping it doesn't go afield of our agenda. And I've probably been doing this as well. We're all, I think, on school committee fielding comments from various stakeholders in the district, and we're a conduit for the community as often as we can be. And the community is students, teachers, voters, taxpayers, everyone. But as Mr. Pedraza just mentioned, he mentioned the EGEA. And I know that Mr. Pedraza and Mrs. Meyer meet regularly. So as concerns are coming from teachers, and I'm happy to entertain conversation with teachers back and forth. But I have said, there are ways for you to have these conversations and sort of a chain of command, and also methods for relationship building and discussions that take into account all interests. So I'm probably guilty of forgetting that sometimes, and just wanted to make sure that we remember that those conversations with teachers, as they're represented by the EGA, then go to, I believe you have regular meetings with the EGEA and flesh those things out.
Thank you, Dr. McEwen. Any other comments or questions before I turn to our member of the public? All right, well, I see we have Ms. Bucka with us tonight. Welcome.
Hello, can you hear me?
Sure can.
Okay, thank you. I wanted to say thank you to Mr. Pedraza for sharing this information. It's very helpful and helpful information to bring to the SEAC. So obviously I'm the resident, bring up questions about special education. I wanted to, and you gave me several more things to think about as you were having your school committee discussion. So with regards to the asynchronous Monday, from the viewpoint of students with IEPs and likely also 504 plans, I just wanted to say that I hear a lot of discussion from the viewpoint of the teachers. And many of you have said very, very accurately that teachers always need more planning time and that there really should be more. And I agree, but I want to point out that doing it through an asynchronous model fosters serious inequities. Okay, so there are students in this district, many, but not all, that can access asynchronous learning pretty 100%, you know, almost as good as, you know, doing regular classroom instruction. But there are students with IEPs and 504 plans who cannot. And I think that, you know, there were discussions with my own kids where it was, you know, the IEP doesn't go away on that Monday. And the IEP, how it would be implemented on that Monday could not be answered. So I just think that I would like to ask you, as you think about how to create more collaborative time and instructional time for teachers and staff, which I fully support, that you understand that I don't think asynchronous Mondays on the regular is the right solution for equity in our district, especially with regards to our achievement or opportunity gap. I think it was Dr. McEwen that was talking about data and the survey data and how it was disaggregated. I would like to also ask if the data is disaggregated by special education teachers and related service providers, and I might even suggest that they be put together into one group, because then it wouldn't be such a small N size. The reason I suggest that is because a lot of times professional development that seems globally applicable isn't really sometimes as applicable and meaningful to their roles as other things might be. And I'm not saying they all are or are not, but I think it's a meaningful data point for the Special Education Advisory Committee. We would hope that the PD committee are considering that. And then finally, the real reason I raised my hand was I wondered if Mr. Pedraza could speak now or at a future meeting about, are there special education and related service representatives on the PD committee? And if not, how are we soliciting feedback from these populations that their job description, like especially if I think about severe and profound teachers, their job description is pretty fundamentally different than that of the majority? Thank you.
Thank you so much for all of that, Ms. Bucka. Points well taken. And I will go back to Mr. Pedraza because he did reference the Professional Development Committee as part of his update. So if he would like to address that question directly, that would be great.
Certainly. We, in terms of the Professional Development Subcommittee as it's currently constituted, we do have representation across all grade levels. It does not go across all departments, but we do have special educators involved, as well as special education in terms of building principals, as well as Dr. Hughes. And again, that membership is expanding. Also on the Professional Development Subcommittee are paraprofessionals, representation on that. And what we do is we do put out those surveys in terms of what people want, but as well as like our next one in many cases is going to be about some of those assurances, some of the things that not only did we say that we were going to do, but also as you referred to in terms of our data, in terms of the equity gap, things we need to do. And so there are some professional developments that go on and make sure that, okay, this is what teachers say they need and what they need and want, and we are able to do that. And then this is something that in terms of what we as a district or as administrators or as professionals have said that we've decided that this is something that we are going to undertake. And so, and in many cases, a lot of those things happen organically, as I mentioned, in terms of Principal Hopkins taking it upon himself to start digging into and investigating and pushing the thinking of our inclusion practices at East Greenwich High School. And so these are conversations that I know will be promulgated district-wide. And then in terms of your other, people do have the ability to self-select, so we do have specialists. So I will need to break down some of that data, but it is definitely something that the PD feedback and the surveys that I give, sometimes when I try to create the same ones each time, but then when we have different providers, sometimes things got get lost in the shuffle. And unfortunately, in terms of homeschool, some of those things can get broken down. So where I added, oh, let's put in counselor, specialist, school psychologist, related service provider, that and other, that people can self-identify, we gained in that. What I lost in that was homeschool, or in this one, I had it in the affirmation form, but in terms of, so disaggregating some of that data, I'll be able to do by specialty, but in terms of not by homeschool. But I'll make sure to have that ready and able to be promulgated for the 2 occurring in November.
Great. Thank you so much for that, Mr. Pedraza. Any other comments or questions before we move on to the next agenda item? All right, that brings us to our subcommittee reports. We have just one this evening from the Finance and Revenue Committee. So I'll turn to Mr. Dronzek.
Thanks. This should be easy because while we started to hold the meeting, we did discover we did not have a quorum. So our meeting will go down as no meeting is canceled with no minutes. But the goal was really to introduce new members and introduce Maggie to the team. We were able to do that anyway, even though it's not official. And what will happen is that meeting would have been to review what we reviewed at the prior school committee meeting with Q1 numbers and COVID expenses. And normally we would do that before the school committee hears it, but the timing was not going to work this time around. So I did offer to sit through the next meeting as a transition, but it will not be run by me because there will be a lucky winner of the new chair of the finance committee after the election, and it won't be me. So I will probably sit through that as what I guess would be a public member at that point, just to let them transition it fairly. Any questions?
Thank you so much for that, Mr. Dronzek. So that brings us to you waving goodbye to Mr. Dronzek?
No, I'm signaling to you, but sort of waving goodbye.
Thank you.
I want to thank Jeff for all his work on the finance committee. I mean, the work that so many of you all have undertaken in various committees that needed stewardship and support and shepherding and supporting our previous superintendent and our current superintendent with issues big and small. I know was appreciated by Dr. Mercurio and has been appreciated by Mrs. Meyer, but you've also helped edify me on a million different things along the way. And I'm so appreciative of you as a partner on this committee and especially in leading that subcommittee.
Well, thank you for that, Dr. McEwen. I should note that this is likely not our last meeting. We typically, as everybody knows, meet on the first and the third Tuesday of the month, but because the first Tuesday in November is election day and it's a holiday, we've had to move our first meeting in November to November 10th. It's unlikely that the election will be certified in time to be able to seat new members for November 10th. So you are probably all stuck with the 3 of us who will not be continuing for one more meeting. So I thought that bared mentioning, but thank you for that, Dr. McEwen.
My thanks still stands, but I won't do it again.
Thank you, Dr. McEwen.
Oh, you can, that'd be fine. So that does bring us to the discussion items for this evening, of which there are none this time, which brings me to school committee suggestions for future agenda items. Does anybody have any this evening? If not, do let Mrs. Meyer or me know for our next meeting. I will certainly be helping to plan the agenda for the next meeting at the very least. But seeing nothing, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
So moved by Dr. McEwen, seconded by
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Dronzek. Any discussion? All those in favor, roll call vote.
Madam Chair, if Dr. McEwen could do the roll call vote, Mrs. DiMiglio does not have access.
I sure can. Allison Powell.
Aye.
Ann Musella.
Aye.
Carolyn Mark.
Aye.
Jean Quinn.
Aye.
Jeff Dronzek.
Aye.
Lori McEwen votes aye. Matt Plain.
Aye.
The ayes have it. We are adjourned. We'll see you all next time. Thank you.
Good
Bye.
night, everybody.